Today's question is it possible to change the type of an event with the Google Calendar API using Google Apps Script? And the answer is no, it's not, unfortunately. Event type isn't a field you can update in the API. But what you can do is delete your old event and recreate it as the new type. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, in my calendar, I have the Spring Bank Holiday marked in the UK for the end of this month. It's in there as a standard event right now. I'm going to recreate it as an out-of-office type event in my Google Calendar. So in Google Drive, I'm going to create a new app script project. I'm going to give it a name. And then before I write any code, I'm going to enable the Google Calendar service. Now this means we can just access the Google Calendar API without having to directly talk to the endpoints or anything like that. We can just use the calendar identifier instead. The first thing we're going to have to do is find the ID of our event that we want to recreate. So what we're going to do is do an event search. So we're going to type calendar, events, and then list. Now this needs two bits of information. So the first is the ID of the calendar we want to search. And in this case, I can use the special value primary, which means it just searches my primary calendar. I don't need to know the actual ID. The second bit is one of the optional informations that we can give to the calendar API, and it's called query search. And I'm going to search for Spring Bank Holiday, as that's the name of my event. Now, the event search will give us back a list of items, and then for each of those items, we will log to the console its name and ID so we can make sure we've got the right one. So event.summary is the name of the name field. There isn't a name or a title, it's called summary. And then the ID. So let's save that and run it. The first time I run, as always, I'll get a permissions pop-up and it's going to view events on my calendar. That's what I've asked it to do so far. And great, we've got our Spring Bank Holiday event and its ID that I can access. Now we can recreate our event. So we know what our ID is. Let's just run find ID and get that so we can copy and paste it. There we go. So I've got my event ID. Now I can go and find the API representation of the event. So again, calendar, events, and this time instead of list, we're just going to get. And you can see here it needs two bits of information, so the calendar ID again and the event ID. So our calendar ID again is going to be primary, and then our event ID we've already got. So now we have our event. Now, usually we'd try and do an update. So we could say calendars, events, update, or patch. But the type field isn't a field that we can update using those variables. So we need to make a new event. So what we're going to do is in our API event, we are going to remove any IDs. So for example, the eTag ID, we can make that null. The iCal UID, we're going to make that null. And the reason we're doing this is because when we try and recreate it, we can't give it IDs that already exist. So its actual ID is going to be null also. And finally, its HTML link is also going to be null. And the last thing we want to do is actually change the event type that we were trying to change in the first time. So this time it's going to be an out-of-office event. Now we can go back to our calendar, events, and this time we can insert. So you can see we need an event to send it and the calendar ID. So we're going to say our API event, and again, it's going to go in our primary calendar. And lastly, we're going to delete our old event. So calendar events dot remove. and there we need the calendar ID and the event ID. So again, it's going to be primary and our event ID. So now let's run our recreate event script. This time we've asked it to do some different things, so it's going to ask us for new permissions. This time we want to edit and delete things from our calendar. So we'll allow it to do that. Let it run. It's complete. And there you have it. We've removed our old event and replaced it with an out of office type event instead.